I won't tell
Okay,
you
we're
any
live.
secrets. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Selling with Science. Researchers are putting out millions of studies, not millions, okay, lots of studies for you to help millions?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of researchers. There's like a lot of people.
So. Okay, but what about the ones that help you sell better? Millions?
I don't know.
Thousands.
I'll stop interrupting
We're going to guesstimate thousands. So lots of studies that can help you sell better, but the problem is that you don't have time to read them all. So we do the dirty work for you, and you join us for 20 minutes and you get to implode your business. I am Nikki Elbaz, and this is...
Hey, I'm Sophia Dagnon. And today we're going to talk about attention spans and whether they're actually as short or as long or as whatever as we think.
So the reason we're talking about attention spans this week is because we were talking about social media last week. And whenever I think about social media and engagement and all this kind of stuff, I think about what the brilliant Roland Fisher, who was in our mastermind together, he mentioned how attention spans are, so basically he cited this study that attention spans are 8.25 seconds. And he said that is absolutely garbage, because what they did was they did a study on Facebook, and they were like measuring people's brains. By the way, the actual study is really hard to find. We'll get into that in a second. So they were measuring like brain engagement and that kind of stuff while people were using Facebook. And his theory is not theory, his what's the word? When you like,
it's a theory, like thought, idea.
It starts with an A. Whatever. Anyway, his assertion or whatever is that it's really about context, because, you know, meanwhile, while we have this 8.25 attention span, we're watching a 2-hour movie, and we are paying good attention to that 2-hour movie if it's a good movie. So it's kind of ridiculous that we have this notion of short attention spans, when really it's really just about the fact that we have different modes of behavior on different things. When we're on Facebook, what we're looking to do, what we want to be doing, is scrolling and scanning. We are engaging in that activity in a lighter sort of way. And it's kind of like all sorts of tasks. Like when I'm cutting vegetables, I can be talking to someone. I can be talking, and often I will be, I'm not just, and when I'm cutting my vegetables, I'm thinking about other things. It kind of reminds me of the System 1 and System 2 thing. I'll let you talk. I've been talking for a long time. No, keep going.
It's literally been like a minute.
Watching the clock. So basically, I found this article on the BBC, and they also were saying how this study is erroneous. And what they said was that they looked into this study, which was done by Microsoft, but it wasn't actually done by Microsoft. Microsoft quoted another study from Statistic Brain. And Statistic Brain seems really legit, but when they tried to check them out, it was kind of sketchy because they got absolutely no responses. Like, they were trying all these different leads to find this study, and it was just kind of floating in the netherworld, never to be seen again. So yeah, it's really interesting. And what one of the, I believe, I don't remember what her title was, but she was analyzing the work, and she was saying, this is actually a quote. She said, "How we apply our attention to different tasks depends very much about what the individual brings to that situation." This is Dr. Briggs, by the way. "We've got a wealth of information in our heads about what normally happens in given situations, what we can expect. And those expectations and our experience directly mold what we see and how we process information in any given time." So yeah, when you are, this is what reminded me of System 1 and System 2, which, by the way, we discussed in a different week. It's Kahneman and what's his name?
Ersky.
Yeah. What they developed together. Sophia, you're really good at explaining it. Want to explain it?
No, you're doing awesome. But no, basically, Kahneman and Tversky studied the way we think. It's, I suppose, the best, like, really readable work is Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And it just explains that we kind of have two systems. And that's a very simplified way to think about it, but it makes it easier to talk. So you have System 1, which is basically your subconscious intuitive self. which makes decisions very, very quickly and actually controls most of what you do. And then you have system 2, which is kind of slow, and that's your logical side. And it's the side that tends to get really tired as you go through the day, and it's the side that tends to be kind of very slow, very laborious. And yet that's who you think of when you think of the way you make decisions, because that's kind of your thinking brain is your slow side that's actually believes it's in charge of you, but it really, really isn't.
Because we're often, when we are on Facebook, we're just kind of going through the motions. It's not really a very engaged sort of experience. So you can't really blame system 1 for not paying attention and say we have a short attention span if that's kind of what we're hoping to experience in that moment. And that's what we're used to experiencing in the moment. I mean, how much value is in your feed? Maybe a little bit, but not enough to engage that system 2 and waste that energy that you need for other decision making experiences in your day. So there's just some interesting stuff. What I found also really fascinating is they actually brought in an expert on fish, and she said that fish have amazing memories and don't have a short attention span at all, and that is also totally made up. So, all these when I was digging around on this, looking for this study, I was getting all these articles like humans have shorter attention spans than goldfish, and goldfish don't have short attention spans. So the whole thing is totally made up. It's really fascinating. Yeah, so this kind of reminds me of that first study that our very first Selling with Science, when we quoted that 8% of New Year resolutions 8% of people keep their New Year's resolutions, and that number was wrong. So it's important to keep, to dig into your research and make sure that you're reading legit papers and that you're reading them critically. So it's interesting stuff. So I read another piece where he wasn't challenging the study scientifically. He was just challenging it from his perspective. This was an entrepreneur, and he was saying that it's really just about, that we have so many choices nowadays. So if you bore me, then I'll switch. It's not that I can't focus. It's that I don't want to, because I know there might be more out there. I honestly don't really see how that's so different. Because if we're always looking for other options, that to me does sound like we're more distractible. That does sound to me like we're not focusing. What do you think? Does that sound like focusing to you? If you're always kind of in the peripheral, saying, "Oh, there's other fish out there."
I think it really depends on context again. And actually, I want to play devil's advocate on the movie thing. Okay. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people that, they could be sitting and binge watching a Netflix show for hours or watching a movie, but they're hardly ever doing just that. It's usually also surfing on your phone and surfing on your tablet and writing something on your laptop with these other hands that you've suddenly grown while sitting on your couch.
I'm horrified. No way. I can't even. Growing up, my mom would always fold laundry while we were watching movies, and it was like, "Mom, stop, just sit down." I was actually thinking about this because immediately as you said that, I started thinking about the teenagers who I see interacting with each other, and they're not just having conversations with each other, they're always going back to their phones. And just how this generation is so different, blah blah blah. And so I immediately thought of that when you said on your phone. And it's really interesting to me, how does this play? If it's not true, then what is that? Why can't they just put their phone in their pocket and have a conversation with their friends? And maybe they don't want to. Maybe they, spend all day with their friends in school and they want to be on their phones too. I don't know.
And I think something can be true and not true at the same time, depending on the context. Because I mean, if something is I'm somebody who, if I watch something, I want to watch it. So it's I want to sit down and I want to enjoy it and I want to get into it. And I find that if I'm on my phone doing something, that is because whatever I'm watching is incredibly bad, at least to me.
Well, of course.
But also, one thing I've noticed, and this is just my hypothesis on it, but we tend to reach for distractions when we don't feel comfortable in a situation. Like one of the reasons,
Mm.
say like you're working on a big project, when you start procrastinating, it's because you've hit something in that project that is making the project feel really hard. And so you're trying to reach for anything else that is going to save you from trying to do it. So I think in a lot of situations where we reach for our phones and we reach for something else is because you're getting all these kind of signals of stress almost from your brain. You don't feel comfortable in the situation. Maybe you're trying to watch something, but you're remembering what happened at work that day. And you're thinking about the bills you have to pay and all the things you have to do. And so it's difficult to quiet your brain down. And I think all those things play into that moment.
I wonder if there's almost a triggered response of like, get me out of this situation, look for other things. That's really interesting. Okay, so going back to the movie thing, what about in a movie theater? I mean, you'll definitely see some people checking their phones, but I feel like the people who are checking their phones are like the boyfriends that are with their girlfriends watching a chick flick. Like they're not interested.
Then don't come to the cinema. I'm sorry. Like I have a thing against people who go to the cinema and do anything but watch the movie in absolute silence.
So it's possible for people to watch the movie in absolute silence. They are going to that experience. Like when you're home and binge watching, that's very different than when you're saying, I am now going to focus my attention on this experience. This is what I want to be doing right now. This is not making me uncomfortable. This is what I want to be doing now.
I think that's the key. I think you hit it there. I think people will pay attention to what we want to pay attention to. And anything else, then yeah, you're going to get distracted. So I think as a brand, you just need to figure out what's going to get your customer to pay attention and give them that. I mean, like if I could be surfing on my phone, but if I find a really good book, I could sit with that book for 8 hours straight without needing to get up and eat and do anything else.
Right?
I can read for a very long time. But
yep. Bye, bathroom.
in other situations, I'm trying to distract myself every 5 seconds because the thing is uncomfortable.
I think there's also habitual, like we were kind of talking about, like when you're scrolling through a Facebook feed, the habitual, Joanna Weeb talks about this, how like she basically took what people say about insomnia, how you're, as soon as you are not sleeping in your bed, you should leave your bed and do something else because your bed should be a place to sleep. So she mentioned once how your place of work should be a place of work. And when you start getting distracted, you need to get up and do something else. And that's why I have a puzzle in my desk, on my other desk. And yeah, I think another thing is like the habitual element of like a task. Are you used to paying attention? Are you not used to paying attention? And like those neurotransmitters of like, oh, when I sit in this, I'm supposed to be checking Slack every 5 minutes. Not that I ever do that, no.
No, I think places and like something I started doing recently, which I used to be super against, was I've just been scheduling times in my calendar for doing certain things. So if it's that specific time, then that is what I'm doing. And that really helps my concentration for that period of time, which I thought was really interesting because I was super against planning like anything.
Why? Because why?
Because it felt confining. Like it felt stifling. Like I couldn't breathe almost. Like just the idea made me feel very stifled, I think really is the word.
That's interesting because in a way, that stifling is helping you stifle the distractions.
But it does. And like so much of it I think is mindset and context and so many other things. So I think with these like factoids, because they're not really facts, of like you have an attention span of like this many seconds. We're trying to simplify a very complicated context dependent thing because yes, sometimes your attention span is like 1 second and sometimes it could be 5 hours, especially if you hit that state of flow that I'm not even good. Should I try to pronounce his name? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi? I just completely butchered that dude's name, but his book Flow and his scientific research is great.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing you said really intrigued me, the whole uncomfortable thing. We start looking for outlets when we hit uncomfortable moments. So I'm really curious how that plays into marketing. In terms of, so what I was first thinking was when you were saying like, okay, uncomfortable. So what about in a movie when the action is getting really intense? I would think that would actually glue you to the screen more, or when the conflict or whatever, I would think that you need to start paying super serious attention. And that might be because you're not actually uncomfortable because it's not happening to you. But then I started thinking in terms of that customer journey and using pain agitation solution, like agitating the person's pain, making them really feel uncomfortable. I feel like those places are where they really start to pay attention, not where they start shifting away.
I think again it's context dependent because I remember like I've been in situations where like you get together with groups of people
Hmm.
and like so me and Nikki did this mastermind together and we had weekly meetings and I found that every time I got really uncomfortable I just started sketching. So there was some sessions that I spent the entire 2 hours just drawing trying to kind of shut off the discomfort. So like it is a distraction. I mean, it's not like a huge distraction because it doesn't cognitively impair me really, but
Hmm.
it's still, I think we still find outlets for discomfort.
Hmm.
I drew a lot
You
during our
think
meetings.
even now I really want to draw, just by the way. Um, you think even as you're reading this, like super, like it's in your head, you're reading this sales page, and it is describing you in your pain perfectly. I feel like I'm like gripped to the page, like I am glued. You can't get me off of there until I find that solution at the bottom.
That's really interesting. See, I try to leave. Like whenever I read past, because like problem agitation solution doesn't really work for me. At least I don't think it does. Maybe it does. Like so my opinion's a bit biased here, obviously.
Mhm.
But I find it I just get uncomfortable and I leave the page. I'm like, nope, this is uncomfortable. I'm gonna go draw a cat.
That is fascinating, Sophia. So, do you use PAS when you're writing your copy?
I do because I think it really works. Also, most people are not
But not
weird.
on you.
It probably does in the right context again, because again, there's other times when I've read and I'm like, yep, I need to buy this.
Mhm.
So context. How do you find your context? Customer research.
It always comes back to that. Yeah.
But again, I think it depends because I think it maybe comes into stages of awareness and just into like the stages of being a human being with different thoughts throughout the day. It's
Mhm.
sometimes it's going to work really well in your customer based on how they're feeling, and sometimes it's going to make them uncomfortable. But that's okay as long as the percentage that it works is higher than the other percentage. I think.
And
What do
this
you
is
think?
where I get skeptical about urgency because for me, I need time to make decisions. Like, I hate making decisions. And when you throw urgency on me, that's when I start. Okay, so this is my discomfort. It's like, help, you're making me decide something fast. I'm out. Bye. I'm done. Or I'm like, okay, I need it. Bye. Like, bye, B-U-Y. But then I am upset and I'm like feeling regret and I'm not happy with the brand. So it's not a good buy. Like, I'm not an
Hmm.
ideal prospect at that point when I could have been, but you pressured me into it. So I feel unhappy.
Okay, but I'm going to throw an urgency at you that I know you bought because you've
Okay.
signed up for courses and for things with launch periods,
Hmm.
and they use urgency.
True. But okay, so one of the things I am thinking about is a course that I signed up with urgency. And I felt like I didn't have enough time because I came into the launch funnel like midway through. So it was like I had like 2 days to decide. And, of course, life was crazy because it always is. And I was like, I need to just figure this out. And I couldn't figure it out. So I just bought it. And then I regretted it. Whereas another course, that to me is not urgency. A whole week to decide, like other launches that I've experienced, or you know, whatever, a period of days, where you get the webinar and all this and all that. That to me is like enough time to decide because I am also a huge person who a person who hugely defers decisions. So I do need the urgency, but I feel like it needs to be done in a way that I can actually make the decision. Like I can have ownership of the decision.
So I think our takeaway is humans are complicated. Everything we do is context dependent.
Yay!
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And
But
that
that's why we
cleared
have to
that
do
up.
research. Yeah, right. Because it helps. It helps shed light on. It helps uncover things, and yeah. So yeah. All right. We are on break for the next 3 weeks. So subscribe below so that you get a notification of when we're back on. And yeah, we'll see you in at week 4.
Yeah. See you in a couple of weeks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for joining us.